Hello humans, non-humans, and the undead. My name is Makituna and welcome to the 400 subscriber special, which, if you watched my last mods and buildings video, I think it was, I said is going to be tips that I learned while making roleplays. If you don't know, and this is the first video that you watch of me, I make roleplay videos, which Minecraft roleplay videos, and I decided for anyone who wants to learn how to make their own, this is some tips that I learned while making them. Now, let's get started. So, this first point, which is stories, I want to give a note. This is not rules, those are more like what I learned from my mistakes, so you can also learn from my mistakes. But from stories, I would recommend to know where your story starts, where your story ends, and things that you want to happen in the middle. It's better to plan out the entire story, like write the actual story and then put it on Minecraft. But if you're not as good as that, in doing that, I would recommend to just know where it starts, know where it ends, the events that you want to happen in the middle, and do that. Because some things will take a time to progress, so you can figure out some stuff in the middle that you didn't know in the start if you want. This is, again, not a rule, but I would recommend you should really know what you wanted to start and where you want it to end, because otherwise you'll get lost in your own story. And also I would recommend, when you create the goals, that you watch back. If you create a new goal, watch back your old videos if you already uploaded, and see if it doesn't contradict something that was back then. Now, on to the next point. And the first point is leading up to the second when it comes to mods. When you're talking about mods in the worlds that you're creating, I would recommend to first do the story before you do, or choose what you want to be in the story before you do the mods, because, well, you need to choose mods based on what you need for the story, because sometimes if you put too many mods based on what you see in other roleplay series, you might download mods that you don't need. And believe me, the world can be generated based on certain things in the mod. I'll give an example with one of the mods I have, if the inventory will open. Okay, I have the Dragon's Mount mod, which puts some places, I'll call it, I'm not sure what they're called in the mod, but I'll call it dragon structures, which are where the eggs are found. So yeah, this will change based on whether or not you have the mod, and if you find out later that you don't have the mod, but you don't need the mod, but you need something else, it might put too much on your computer, and then you can't download the mod you actually need because your world already generated itself based on a mod that you didn't need. You can create backups, but sometimes there are glitches that can be found within. So yeah, choose your mods after you choose what you need in the story, because it will save a lot of problems later on with the mods. But mods that I do recommend as kind of a default, I will call it, is mods that I am recommending right now, especially if you're doing a single player roleplay, which a single player roleplay is without any other actors in it, which are the custom NPC. The custom NPC mod is kind of a must, and it allows you to put custom NPCs that will act out as your characters. And in any roleplay, I would recommend the More Player Models mod, because it has a feature which allows you to, for example, sit or crawl, and this can add a bit more as a dimension. You can do stuff with it. It will help rather than just crouching in order to sit or anything of the like. But those are just my recommendation if you don't think you need like the more player models. But you are doing single player roleplay, I would highly recommend the custom NPC one, unless you're doing like a loner one. But this is the mods that I recommend and how I recommend to choose mods. So on to the next point. Now our next point will be skins, because I decided to put this before I'll talk about characters in specific, because this also concerns your character and like how the world will look, kind of. Now, if you're not aware what a skin is, then, or that it's called a skin, it's what you have on you, as, for example, this, how I look. Now, if you didn't know it's called a skin, no judgment, I will clear the weather. But when it comes to skin, I would recommend to look at two things in specifically. One, in what type of time your story takes place. Like if it takes in modern time, then a skin like my default one for the channel is like more suitable. But if you're doing something like the world that I am in right now, which is Children's of the world, which I should have said, because I'm going to switch between the worlds, you will have a bit of spoilers for each of the episodes that were released until this video. So go watch them if you haven't yet. But if you're doing for something like Children's of the World, which is a bit more old-timey fantasy, like a medieval fantasy, I would like to say, but I would assume it would be more categorized as like fantasy, then my usual skin is not very suitable for the world. You could do like, if you're trying to do like someone from a different world entering up, then it can still line up pretty nicely, but it really does depend on your story what the clothes of the characters will be, because you shouldn't go too much out of the line of what the world looks like, because if you're trying to convince people that it's an old-timey thing and then you're putting modern clothes, then it doesn't quite make sense. But it could also be the style that you want to go with. So after we talked about the skin, like what kind of skins you should use for each of your stories, there's two ways to have skins for your characters. You can either find them, or you can create them. Now, there are two ways to create them, which is the HD ones that you can use more player models, and there are videos that can explain it more in depth. But then you can create them in Nova Skin, which just makes it more generic, but still good Minecraft skin in my opinion. This is where I create all of my Minecraft skins. But there are videos also explaining better than I can how you can find a skin without accidentally using someone else's skin, like from their own roleplay, because it can be a bit awkward if you're accidentally using someone else's roleplay skin, because then you don't have much of a unique character. But this is my opinion. On to the next point. After we talked about the skins, we're going to talk about the characters. After you've chosen what time period your story takes place and how kind of the characters will look, then you don't have to base the characters on how they look. You should base how they look on the characters. But we're talking about what you should do to create the characters. First, when you're creating characters, you need to to put in your mind that those characters should be useful to the story. If they're background characters and they don't have a major part in the story, they should, or you're not actually talking about them, I would recommend not to actually give them a name. It makes them seem a bit more important than they are. But if you want to give them a name, it's also fine. I did that in the past. But now that I think about it, it's like, then you can't use that name again, unless it's a gimmick in your story that there's two characters with the same name. But when it comes to names as well, when you choose, I would recommend stuff that don't sound too uh, out of place for your story. As again, think about the time period your story takes place and like the world setting of the story. You should also realize that a lot of your characters should have their own goals and their own reason to be in the story. For example, um, if you watched my Children's of the World roleplay, I will take an example from one of my own creations. The characters, both Eric and Kate, again, spoilers, although it's spoilers for the first episode, sort of, they go on the adventure with Maki for the reason that they also want to search about the legend. So they have their own reason to be there. They aren't just following because the story said they should. You should give them their own reason. It becomes easier to find the reasons the more flesh out you make the character. And when it comes to name, there are two ways to choose a name, which is at the time, and you can also think what their parents would name them logically. But yeah, so the 2 points that you should focus on are uh, don't make it too out of the character too out of place for the time or in the world that you build for your story, and make sure the characters have their own character. I would also recommend when it comes to names to not choose way too many names that are uh, similar to each other, or again, not to choose names that are the same unless it's kind of a gimmick. I think that's the right word for your own story. That two characters have the same name. So, on to the next point. And in this point, as I mentioned in the mods point, there are ways to create role plays. Now, if you've watched Minecraft roleplays, which is probably also why you want to make your own roleplay, there are main two ways that I know of to create roleplays, and another way that I'm not sure classifies quite as a roleplay. But correct me if I'm wrong, it's my personal opinion. You can have your own opinion. I would love to hear them. And those two ways are single player with the custom NPCs as your characters, and the upside for this type of a roleplay, which is also unbiased because I am creating those types of roleplays, is that you don't need to align your times with other people. You can create them when you have the time, and roleplays as being already very time consuming to make, this can save a lot of your time. You can do it in your free time, and it can save a lot of things. It's also less likely for multiple bloopers because people can affect each other to make more bloopers, and then it can mess up some stuff and again take up time. But there's also the multiplayer roleplays that I think became more popular, which also conclude inside of them the third person one, which you use other players and you can also use the custom NPCs as background characters, but you use another other player characters in order to create the roleplay, making it like more fleshed out. Now the upsides to this, in my opinion, sorry for the weird sound, I just touched the microphone by accident, but the upsides to this is someone looking from the outside, not inside, because I did not make multiplayer roleplays ever. The upside to it is that you can have multiple voices, which help differentiate the characters. Differentiate, I think that's the right word. You can correct me again if I'm wrong. And it will help make the story a bit more interesting because you can move more places. Like the custom NPC mod, as good as I think it is, has a bit glitches when it comes to moving the characters. Like, for example, if you're letting the characters follow you, it can get a bit glitchy. But yeah, this is the two categories. You can see which is better for you, because when it comes to mods and multiplayer, it can get a little complicated if you don't know how to create a proper server for it, and sometimes if you want to use outside service for server, then that server will cost money and you might not have that money. But again, that's only my opinion. And the third version I said that I'm not sure is quite like considered is the Minecraft animations. They're roleplays that turned into animations. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not sure if they're even considered roleplays, but correct me again. If you think I'm wrong, I would love to hear your opinion because I am not the know-all of roleplays, so those are just things that I learned. So, on to the next point. Also, a quick thing that I forgot to put in. Uh, you can choose either of the methods to create roleplays based on what's more comfortable for you. If you have the people to play with you to make the characters, then maybe in the way to do the multiplayer, then it might be more comfortable for you. And if you prefer to do it single player, do it single player. But again, just try and figure out which one is more comfortable for you. Again, on to the next point. Now this point is more for if you're using the custom NPC mod, but it could be used for other things. If you're using the version of 1.12.2, which is the version of Minecraft that I'm using, I'm not sure if it stayed for other version or if it exists in other version. I noticed that there is a difference in reach between creative and single player. And not creative and single player, but creative and survival. I am working on straws right now. But between creative and survival has a shorter distance of where you can reach, and creative does not. Also, creative, you can need to make sure that if you're doing a first-person perspective, you need to make sure that if you're in survival while recording and creative while creating stuff, make sure that you switch between them. But also, because survival's reach is a bit shorter, when you're planning out distances of things, I would recommend to switch between creative and survival to see if you can still reach it while in survival, and then go back to creative and create stuff. But yeah, just notice that there are the differences that might appear in reach of survival and creative. On to the next point. Now, the next three sections of this video are going to concern practically the same thing, which will be the mood of the scene and the story that you're trying to put out in a roleplay. Now, when it comes to music, there are multiple ways to get music. There is like a copyright-free music, a royalty-free music that you can find on YouTube. There's also, in the YouTube studios, their own music that you can find. Some of them need like a tribute that you need to put in the description. Some of them don't. And basically there are many ways to find music. Now, I would recommend the YouTube studios music if you're trying to put for a scene, because then at least you know what you need to put there. You're safe, like safe in quotation mark from copyright claims. It will help you better with protecting yourself from those copyright claims, at least at the start. And also, they have a filtering option between moods, genres of music, and stuff like that, which allow you to choose something that you think is better for your specific scene that you're putting the music in, or the specific thing that you're trying to pass through the story. For example, if you're trying to find a sad scene and the music that that you find doesn't seem to fit, the filtering option there can help you find something like, for example, a classical sad music. There is a lot of it, but in my opinion, it's helpful, especially if you're not sure how to find royalty-free music, being sure that it's royalty-free. So yeah, it helps set a scene a lot if you add the music. And on to the next point. Now, when it comes to filters, it's something that I specifically found on the editing software that I use. It also helps a lot with creating the vibe, I'll call it, for your scene. For example, if you want to find what editing software I use, the watermark of it shows up in one of my videos, which now they made a watermark mandatory, so you can try and find one without a watermark. If you're wondering why I have no watermark here, is because I paid for the service. So, got rid of the watermark. But again, it's something that I found on the editing software that I used, and there might be on other editing softwares. I didn't use any other editing software, maybe except for default ones in my old computers. But filters can help set a mood if you're putting like darker filters, or specifically if you're trying to differentiate between two different things. Like, I have a couple of dream sequences in some of my roleplays, which I decided to create a filter, like, not create a filter, but like to just choose a filter that's specifically for those dreams. So if people notice a change in the filter, they can, this is a dream, understand that this is specifically a dream, or this is specifically in this world, or anything of the like. It helps set a mood and it helps set a scene. This is also a perk of using visual formats. You can use the visual effects to set where you are. On to the next point. Now, this part, maps, helps the story, because when you're trying to create a story, the environment is pretty important in my opinion. So, in this point, I would explain some things about maps. I would recommend, for example, if you're trying to do an old-time kind of feel for your story, the normal Minecraft world is kind of suitable, because there are villagers, there's villages, and a lot of it is less modern than, for example, if Minecraft had cities that looked modern. There are cities. But when it comes to maps, there are two things you can do about maps. One, you can, or actually three. One, you can use the default setting, like the default world, and create buildings on it that make the map and make things for the way that your story wants to go. Like, if you need this building for this episode, you can build it yourself. Which is originally how I went with the Light of Magic roleplay. I did it based on the default world, and I found a village, and I decided that I'll build in certain places what I need for the story. But, for example, in Children's of the Worlds, where I am right now in the map of, I needed a city, and, well, I built an entire city for it. Like, you can look up, like, things, tips for how to build a certain city, or stuff like that. Now, the question of whether or not I build the maps is also a reason why I created the Mods and Buildings series, which in there I'm creating a modern map, because I need a modern city. Now, this is the second way, which you can create your own map, and you can build it yourself if you want to give it a more like a authentic feel of your touch in buildings, like how you build things, how you create your world. Now, the last and like the third option and the last option is finding a Minecraft map that suits what you need, like a modern city, a kingdom, ship, because you can find it on platforms on the internet. But for this, I would recommend, I'm not sure how many, like, how critical it is, but I do recommend, out of respect for the creators of the map, to either tag them or ask them, hey, is it okay to use your map for my roleplay? If they ask, just to tag them, respect their wishes. After all, those people worked possibly hours for some of those maps. But again, maps also help create what you feel of the world. If you create it old-timey or modern, the maps help it a lot. So yeah, on to the next and last point for this video. In the last point, we get to dialogues. This is very specific for single-player roleplays because, as I said before, this is the roleplays that I currently create at the time of recording it. Maybe I'll be able to do something like a multiplayer in the future, but at the time of me recording this is the only ones I made, so this is the only ones I learned about. Now, when it comes to dialogues, especially if you use the custom NPC mod, you need to take into account two things. One of them is more related to the characters, which is each character should have their own voice, whether when you're reading it, or try and figure out how the character would most likely speak, in terms of what words or what descriptions they would give something, or make it sound natural, basically. Try and figure out what sounds most natural to a certain type of character. Also, for dialogues in general, the second point is try and make it sound natural. Now, I'm not saying it as if all my videos have completely natural dialogue, because honestly, they sound natural to me. Maybe to you they won't sound natural, and honestly, if some of those things don't, then please tell me. I would love to learn from it. And which is also the point that I'm going to give now. If you're not sure if your story and dialogue sound natural to anyone else, you can ask your friends, you can ask your family, hey, does this sound something like something that a normal person would say? If you're trying to create a normal person, sometimes you're not. And you can also, if you're not sure, try and look if you're getting criticism, which I have not really gotten till this point, but hey, maybe in the future, try and take it to heart, because I would also try, if you have any criticism for me, I would love to hear it. I would try and implement it unless it's something that I'm doing intentionally. So yeah, in dialogue, just try and figure out if it sounds natural. If you're not sure if it sounds natural, ask others or rely to how you created the character. Like, someone who's very happy all the time and very cheerful won't start being very angsty out of nowhere. So unless they have a reason, I would recommend to just know that they probably won't do that. Unless your character would, because I did not create your character, I would not know. So yeah, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like down below, comment down below if you found anything that you think that will help you, anything that you think that you think differently from me. I would love to hear other opinions. I would love to hear any other tip that you maybe know from your own roleplays, or from roleplays that you watched and you think, oh, this is something they did that may help others. I would love to hear it down in comments below. And if you haven't watched both of my roleplays, and they're, as I said, they're like a bit of spoilers in this video because I used them as an example, I think once. Go watch them. I have links down below, which those links will lead also to my mods and buildings, which is the world we're in right now. And I have a survival series in Minecraft, which I will almost start a new world in, because there were a lot of updates in Minecraft since I last recorded in it. And a Stardew Valley series. If you love the game, you can go and watch and see me kind of struggle to go day by day as episode by episode. But again, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and again, thank you for 400 subscribers, which now, by the time of recording it, is over 400 subscribers. So yeah, Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed. And see y'all next time. Bye!